this location, here's the following materials that we'll need to finish this project. As you assemble your corners, you need to make sure they're square, and also we put 3 screws in each corner to make sure that they wouldn't bow out. When you assemble your pieces, you may want to go ahead and mark them like you can see in this picture with A and A, so that way you know which corners go where and what pieces go to what location. That would keep it easier and organized. Now for the high tunnel project, you need to make sure you have accurate measurements. As you can see here, we've measured to make sure that we're exactly 2 foot from each piece for the actual frame on the high tunnel. And also make sure to measure from your corners and to keep everything the same distance from each piece. Now what you have here is the arch holders. These are 2-inch pieces of PVC pipe. We've used a band that you see with conduit to fasten those to the board so that way they're secure and hold the arches in place. The arches are 1.5 inches. Now we start to insert the poles into the arch holders. Now this is a kind of a more dangerous process, so be careful of your caution with the bending of the pipe and make sure you don't hit yourself or your helper. This works best with 2 people. You can have one person hold one end and flex the pipe down to the other person. That way you can get those assembled nicely. What you should have is a nice arch. We used a 12-foot arch here, so that creates 6 foot of clearance or more in the center. As you can see, you place each end into the arch holders and make sure they're all the way in. You don't need an accident happening with a pipe slipping out of the arches. Now as you assemble these, continue to make sure that you put them all the way into the arch holders and that you use caution. Like I said, this is flexible pipe and could kick out. With this pipe being 1.5 inches, this will approximately be able to withstand about 4 to 6 inches of snow, and you do want to make sure that they're spaced out the 2 foot like we did on the side batter boards. Now as you can see in this section, we're looking at how high it is. I am about 5'11", so you can see that according to where the shadows are and also the pipes above my head, this gives you a good 6.5 feet of clearance, so that way you can pick your crops and not have to stay bent over the whole time. But it also means that you have to have some helpers when you cover this with plastic later, and we'll go to that later in the video series. Now as I look at the strength of these pipes, you can see that the arch allows you to have some flexibility in the structure, but also have strength, so that way you can withstand snow. Now we start to assemble the side poles, also known as furlings, to add support to our structure with the arches. Now this is still the same size PVC. This is 1 inch on this side, and it's attached with bolts, carriage bolts, that go through the top of the arches down to underneath. You want to assemble them like shown here, because that way the heads won't rub the plastic when you go to cover it. You can tape over them. Now be careful with this. If you use too long a bolt, you may want to cut the ends off, but you just push them through, and you may have to drill the 1 inch piece furling or side arch right where the arches connect. Now we used a measurement of 4 feet up on the arches to get a good place to put your furlings or your side arches, so that way there's more support to the structure. We just use standard nuts and also washers. That way if you did want to disassemble and move this, you could. As you can also see, we try to do the ends first and then measure from the ends to make sure we are maintaining that 2-foot arch length on our side pieces or furlings. Now in this picture, if you look closely, you could have seen the pieces of black tape that were installed over top the heads of the carriage bolts to keep it from rubbing the plastic in case the wind does happen to move the plastic during a windy day or area. Now we start to assemble the door. The door is a small, easy to build PVC model. It's made out of 1-inch PVC plastic. We attach it to the framing boards at the bottom using the same wire and clamp that we attached the sideboards with. Now as you can see, we put in 2 longer pieces of pipe. Plans will be included and information included later on the actual dimensions of the door. And you can see we already had this prefab deal where we could assemble it quicker for the demonstration. It does hinge, so you can open it and close it. And it also includes a locking mechanism. As you can see here, being pushed up to the top, which is made out of 1 1/4 inch, 1 1/2, so it locks it in place so you could actually lock the door shut so it won't blow open. Now while you're assembling the door, what you need to make sure of is, of course, keep everything square. You also have to attach it for support to the first arch that you have on your high tunnel. What we did was we built the frame to match the door size, and then you'll see here in a little bit how we attached it to the arch at the top. Now notice we did not glue anything yet. Reason why is this is a demonstration model. When you have everything set up at your own place, you may want to go ahead and glue it to have a more permanent fixture. Now the pieces that are installed at the top are about 1 1/2 inch, 1 1/4. They slide over the arch and the pole fits inside so it's flexible and doesn't pull down on the arch. It maintains the structure strength. When you have a completed door, you should be able to swing it open and swing it closed. And notice how it opens. It opens to the outside, not to the inside. So that way the wind can blow against it but not pop it open. Now we'll start to assemble the window. Now the window uses a lot of the same techniques as was used in the door. As you can see, we start with our poles that we fasten to the bottom board, using the same metal strappings we did others, and also using a screw to keep it from moving up and down so much. Now you'll see on that picture, it was pre-assembled, but we'll give you the dimensions and stuff later so you can do your own. Now we put in the frame, and then we slide the tube in the bottom so it makes a hinge point. Remember, this is a window that you're going to open on really hot days or to get more ventilation inside your high tunnel. As you can see, it'll fold open and down pretty easy. Now notice it's like the door, it opens to the outside. We continued to assemble our frame, putting on the side pieces and also the top pieces. Now you'll notice I looked at those pieces because we had those marked. I encourage you to mark all of your pieces where they go so that way you can assemble quicker and do a more efficient job of doing that. Now we'll continue to finish our frame, making sure the pieces are snug. Like I said, we did not glue them on this one because this is a demonstration model, but when you set up your own in your own place, you may want to go ahead and glue those to have a more permanent fixture. As you can see, we use the same locking technique as we did on the door. We use just one on the window to make it easier, and we use 1 1/4 inch, 1 1/2 piece over top the 1-inch tubing, so it just locks in place. So that way you could just fold it down easy, like shown. This will allow ventilation. In fact, some people mentioned that day during the demonstration that you could possibly run electric and a fan if it was too hot inside the high tunnel. We continue to assemble the frame. And make sure everything squares up nicely. That's another thing. With the door and the window, you want to make sure it's square so that way every piece fits snug together. And you just unlock it when you need to allow more ventilation. Now this is the top piece that connects to the arch, so that way it'll slide over the arch, but also creates stability for the window frame or door frame, depending on which one you're using. As you can see, it slides into place, and we raise the tubing up to make it match. It does not pull down the arch and allows you to tape over it nicely so it does not tear up your plastic. And now we're going to attach the sideboards, also known as batter boards. What we're using is a piece of 1x4 plain pine board to actually make so we can roll up our plastic. Now we'll put these up about 2 foot from the bottom, so that way it makes it nice and level and a good place, allow ventilation for your plastic when you roll it up later. If you look, you'll notice that there's holes in the batter board, or also known as sideboard. The reason why is because we'll put a locking mechanism in that to hold the plastic up, as you will see later in the video series. Now please, you need to make sure that it's level across, so you need to measure, and you also need to make sure that you're at your 2 foot centers like we did before. As you can see in this video section here, that we're assembling it with some small wood screws that we drill right into the plastic that will hold it. Now be careful, you don't want to use too long of screws to poke them through the other side, so caution needs to be looked at. But you do want long enough so it will go through the plastic pipe and also the board. We continue to assemble here, making sure that we have kept our measurements accurate, and we also are making sure that we do straight arches on our sideboards or batter boards. Now we have to add some tape to some certain areas to keep it from ripping the plastic. As you can see, we're at the window end of our high tunnel. Now this will have to be done to the door end also. But what we're doing is we're taping where it meets the arch and holds the frame of the door or the window in place. Reason why is there's some sharp points, and that could cut the plastic easily, especially if the plastic starts to move. Now, we're not endorsing any tape products, but use a sticky tape that is very resilient. That means it needs to be able to withstand hot temperatures or cold temperatures, and also probably withstand some weathering from the sun. Don't cheap your tape up. Try to get something that's worth a while, that's going to last you a while. If you go cheap tape, you might have problems with it. Now, as you can see, we've taped all around our sharp points. We also went ahead and taped around the frame just in case, and also it kind of helps things stay in place. Now, you do not have to use as much tape as we did. I would rather use caution when it comes to taping stuff and make sure things are sealed over nicely and making a smooth surface. But if you want to just do a round or two, that's fine. You'll also notice I went ahead with the demonstrators here. We did a cross hatch pattern, which allowed us to kind of keep everything secured in place, taped over nicely, and also made sure stuff was held together strong. Now, tape is used more than screws because, like I said, if you try to use something else, the plastic could rub against it and tear a hole in itself. Now this is the next step, the covering of it. You need to use a pretty decent plastic. I would encourage you to use something like 6 or 8 mil that has really good light transparency. This is also a good time to recruit your friends and neighbors and family members, because as you can see, the plastic takes more than just one person putting it on at a time. Now here we're stretching it out, making sure we have it the right way so it'll cover the entire high tunnel and also be able to be stretched so we don't waste extra plastic. Now we did the over the top method, which is basically you pull it over top of the arches. Since your arches are round and hopefully taped down nicely, it shouldn't be any problem. As you can see, it just pulls right on across. Now you can do from the end, but whatever technique suits you and what resources you have, go ahead and use that. Now at the ends, since this is a structure for demonstration and also we're trying to create non-rippable surfaces, you can see we put tape on the ends, and we're also double checking the tape on the sides and make sure it's correctly placed. Now this is where you attach at one end, make sure it is taped down securely, so that way you stretch the plastic tight across the other end. Just like you can see in this little bit of video demonstration, the wind was already picking up, so you need to get this assembled as quick as you can, so that way there's no rips in the plastic that you didn't want to happen. Now we have the side roll-ups. As you can see, we use PVC pipe with an L-shaped handle, so that way you could roll it up by yourself or have a person help you and roll it up easily. Now we tape the plastic to the bar, so that way when you start to roll, it grabs right away and you can roll up the sides. Remember, this is important for ventilation because you got to have air in the high tunnel every once in a while so it doesn't get too hot for your crops. Now, we went ahead and adjusted the sideboards, or also known as the hip boards, and put on some stoppers so that way we could roll up the plastic to that level, maintain tight plastic, and also allow the ventilation we need when we roll it up the sides. We use some common materials. As you can see here, we use plywood and rubber to hold them in place. I would encourage you to use something more like a wiggle wire because it's a little sturdier and a little more available. But if you have to use this, this is what we did to make it from slipping. Here is a locking mechanism we also use so you wouldn't have to hold it in place.